So let me reset this workspace. Try to clean that up. Move some zoom panels around. And go to Window. And, or see, I think we can get this on a window directly right there, 3D and Materials. And the nice thing about this panel, of course, you could get that from the filter, but I mean, you might as well just pull this up and pull it right up here. It's all pretty self-explanatory. Notice that I put text up there for you right away because I know the first question would be, can you apply this to text and will it work? Yes, you can. So let's start with, let's say a rectangle, and I'll zoom in here using Command or Control plus, so we can zoom that up. And you have these different tabs up here for materials, lighting, and object. So the first stop would be object, and I can put this on a plane. So you might think, well, why would you put something on a plane? Because you can move it with this little widget. Take a look at the round part. That rotates it left to right. The little crosshair bars rotate it either on the Y. So you could see you could take something and rotate it on a Y value and get a simulated 3D look, kind of like a picture in a picture concept with video. So a lot of people would say, well, I've seen it. Oh, that's useless. No, it's not useless. The little dot in the middle, if you can get your mouse on that, see the globe, then you can move it around in 3D space and pose it. Now, we don't have animation, but this is the way that 3D works in any program on Earth. The difference between a 3D program is you have a nicer looking little widget, but it's the same. It has red, green, blue. Red is always left to right. Green is top to bottom. And your Z value, X, Y, Z, Z, blue goes into out. Here we just have a little widget. And of course, we can size things. And take a look here, you can rotate things. Now, I know this is the simple one, but look at the presets. So you've got isometric views. So if you had an object or a symbol, this way you could pose it in 3D space. But if I go to extrude, then that's going to be something different. The first thing that comes up, and I haven't seen this discussed at all, is the appearance panel. So if you don't get the appearance panel up, you're going to wonder, how do you take these things off? Well, it's all about an appearance. There it is. Just select that and click the trash can. So remember, if you've got one of these extrudes or revolves and you want to get rid of it, either go to the appearance panel and click the eyeball for it, or click the trash can. But don't rebuild your artwork. You think there would be an option. Maybe at some point that will change. The one you probably want is extrude. And you can see that's very fast, a lot faster than what we used to have with the 3D Classic. Notice that the depth works and it's pretty fast. You could even have caps. All you have to do is take a basic shape, like a rectangle, and work with this. Remember that little dot in the middle? That lets you rotate it around. That's working very quickly. I wish I could get everything in this program to work that fast, or other programs. So, I mean, this is a beta. It's probably going to improve. Notice that you also can turn on, that's like a power button, a bevel. And you've got all these different bevels that you could select. And then you've got the width of the bevel. Then I have to use my scroll button here to get down to the good stuff. You've got the height, the width, and you can have more than one. So just get a shape and work with it. And I think it'll become pretty apparent what you can do. Always try things. Look at this. You have a bevel inside option. Now that'd be interesting if I took the cap off. Well, no, that just gets rid of it. So I don't have to, like the 3D filter, usually there you want to use a stroke, you don't want to use a fill. Here you're really not that far down the rabbit hole because you could just turn things on and off at will. Here, we'll just take that way. So then you could come up and work with the materials. So if I go to the materials, there's a drop down or a slider. I believe we can resize this to some degree and get it out of your face there. Let me get the appearance panel over here and turn it into an icon. I'll take the marble paint because it looks interesting and just drag it on top of the object. Look at that, fast. So once you drag one of these materials on, you could see you have total control over the color. So you can get a color picker up and work any way you want to work here. What's new, by the way, inside of Illustrator, not that far back, is HSB color space. You can save colors in HSB and actually edit colors. So if you click the H, this is your Photoshop color picker, and I want this to be orange, I could click an orange and then go to the saturation and see this little color ramp controls the saturation and the brilliance. So you can see all the colors in here. Then depending on the material itself can have roughness. And these are all pretty carbon life form, as I like to call it, somewhat friendly. The warp intensity, the stain. So this one has like a stain option to it. Position of things, X, Y, top to bottom. Almost like some ways a distortion concept. Density is probably interesting. Yeah, you see it's how dense the pattern in this case is. Some of the basic ones, this one's more involved, but I think if you look at this and work with this, because you'll have it, it'll tell you a lot of how to work with these materials. You don't have to be afraid if you've never been in a 3D program. And anybody that's used Adobe Dimensions will probably go, this is pretty much the same. Yeah, it is. The hue shift is the color. So what would that do? It would shift all the colors around. So you could shift them around. Imagine if you were looking at other artwork, what you could do with the hue shift. Kind of nice. And of course, the saturation or lack thereof. Notice it has normal intensity, height, and height position. And these are usually called bump maps. Unfortunately, they got rid of 3D in Photoshop. You can always get a third-party plugin to get around that limitation. And that's because Adobe now has a program called Substance. So if you go to that site, you can license that. I'll tell you right now, it costs $600 a year. And I think the packs, which you can load in here, see there's a little button where you can get new materials. If you could load those in or get them from the Substance site, if you've licensed yourself up there. But those will have different, depending on the material, things that can make this have a little bit of height, maybe a position on it. Wow, look at this scary one. Ambient occlusion intensity. You know where you're going to see that is this button, which I haven't really shown you yet. Take a look at 3D and materials. See that little button on the right? Look at the drop down. When you click that, it turns on what's called ray tracing. And it's going to take this time to render up when I click render. And here I could have a really high quality render, reduce noise. I could render it as a vector. Boy, that's going to take some time to work. Watch what happens when I click render. It's going to take it time to render. And actually, that was pretty fast. Here I could turn it off. Look at the difference. So what is ray tracing? In 3D programs, light can bend around objects, just like the real world. In the real world, light can actually bend around objects, and it can transmit itself through, called transmission. So light can transmit through. And when you look at that ambient occlusion intensity, that controls if you have an ambient light. So that means you can control how much of the light of the 3D scene. And I think the easiest way to understand that is to go to lighting. So here you've got basic lighting, standard, diffuse, which is like flat. See, it looks flat. Standard's glossy. There's different terms for this in 3D. We don't need to study 3D. We just need to look and understand if I want it flat, or I might want it from the top or the right. And it works. So, and the intensity of whatever light you have selected. Notice how the resolution drops down. I'm going to turn off this ray tracing because basically that's really going to cause render issues. So see, when that's off, this drops down the resolution until you let go of the mouse. That's not a bug. If you work in 3D, that's a feature. And you don't want that ray tracing on, because then that thing's trying to bend light around light. But here's the key to anything in 3D. You usually get the lighting, say in After Effects, somebody will put a spotlight up and then parts of the scene go dark. So they add more spotlights and all these lights. It never works. They don't look at the smallest light. And ambient light is the light that controls the whole scene. So that controls the lighting of everything. See, if I drag the intensity up, that controls the lighting of the whole object. So you can see the smallest light will be the most important light in anything in 3D. You see, I can work with it here, but the ambient light is the light that's going to control. So then when you go back to your materials, a lot of things that have ambient occlusion, depending on how much I put in, can control that. Programs like After Effects have 3D, and you can control how much ambient light gets picked up, or light from any type of light on an object. This isn't basically a 3D program like that. Substance is a 3D program that Adobe has. And also there's other, well, obviously programs out there. If you're looking for a 3D program, if I were you, I would look at Electric Image Animation Systems. EIAS, I believe, .com. They're out of Germany. They're the fastest. They're the easiest interface. They advertise that right on the front. And they're probably a fifth of the price of any other 3D program. Wow. So if you're looking for real 3D, I always recommend them. They have been used on a lot of movies. John Knoll, that made Photoshop, is on the front of their site. He runs Pixar and Industrial Light and Magic, and he'll tell you it's the fastest, best renderer, and I use it constantly at ILM. Plus the fact he's probably like me and he's cheap. I mean, I just don't have thousands of dollars to spend on these programs. So you can see it's all interactive and it works. Remember, if you want to take this off, then you're going to have to get your appearance panel up. That's the only way that you're going to get this to behave itself. Oh, I got it over here hiding. Zoom's hiding it. You can see I could just turn that off and life is good. Here's some text. It's already set up there. So if I go to the object, you can see all I did here was extrude it out. And it was pretty fast. So I think you're going to love this with text because that's what most people are going to want to use this with. You've got the bevels and the rotations down there, or you can just click on the little dot and just get right to it. Remember, we're designers. We're not trying to be 3D artists in movies. By the way, to do that, you probably need a couple serious physics degrees for particle systems. But as a designer, we could get 3D programs. Blender's free, and it's really good. You don't have to spend money, but the concepts here will remain the same. So here's the materials. You could change those, or so you drop another one on, and your text will, everything that you've done with lighting, you can go back, work with that a little bit. Maybe you want that to be diffused. Now look at your ambient light. See how that ambient light controls everything. In the classic, as they call it now, 3D, you can add a light, and the one that you want is the ambient light. Just like After Effects, the ambient light is the important one. Also, under lighting, you can have shadows. At this point, it can get a little bit ugly. Might take time. Render that up, and by default, it goes behind the object. You probably want to put it below the object. You can see now it's starting to kick in. And the distance. Shadow bounds, sometimes they can get cut off. But by default, you probably want that behind. Then when you turn on your ray tracing, and you can see now it's going to take time to render up. Anytime you work with glows, blurs, shadows, especially in 3D, anything with light, look at the difference in that. So you would never know that without the ray tracing. But just remember, on a computer, glows, blurs, drop shadows, those are the things that'll take out any computer on Earth, just the processing power. So as you start to work with this, and I think you will, this is really a beta, and you can turn ray tracing on and off like that and get these types of renders. It's pretty impressive. And I'm assuming that this is going to improve over time. We do have a stop button, and I can turn it off for this object. And my appearance panel can also help. So if I had a star, that would work the same way. You could just extrude it out. And things work pretty quickly. I got the lighting set up. You can work in any way you want. We need to, there it is. It's just taking a little time to render up here. And once I get it off, I didn't put one up here because it doesn't get looked at much. It's like some programs call it a lathe. It's called revolve. So you could do this. You could put things on. Well, here you could just take an ellipse, actually, I believe, and it works with that. I mean, down here it says left edge, go to right edge. So see, this way you don't have to make you shouldn't have to make a half circle to get that to work. It almost looks like at this point I could get that set up to look almost like an apple. Pretty interesting. Caps, you know, on, off. You take that thing time to work. That's a lot of math. And the right edge should correct it. Here's an offset. So you could turn this into a donut. Ray trace it up. And depending on the material, something totally different. Very nice. Here's a regular revolve, though you can get the side of with the curvature pen tool, you could create some really kind of lathe effects. But if you really wanted, because you have now an ellipse where you can separate things out. If my, no, it's fighting me here. Maybe I need to turn you off. So I need to do is just make this a half circle. That's how a lathe would work. And it revolves this around. And I should probably set this to be 180, but with our little time restraints here, but I'll show you this will revolve it around. And then if from the left edge, go to the right edge. And then you've got a ball, so to speak. Then you could put a material on that. Here, I'll use the one we've used. You can see it puts it on there. I could change the colors and almost make it look like a planet, so to speak. Or just go to hue shift, you know, just hue shift it around. And then change some individual colors. And I think we'll have something interesting. Of course, ray trace it, it's going to look totally different. That's kind of like a lathe concept. Let me get my pen tool up here. The curvature pen tool is fantastic because it creates really nice curves. Command key or control key to deselect, V for move, select it and lathe it. I call it a lathe because I'm used to that. It's revolve. It always goes to left edge, tell it to go to the right edge. So you see, you could create something like this. You could even take the cap off. and then offset will open it up, see? I'm gonna leave the cap on even. And what it does, it just spreads it out. You can create these. And also, if you use anything with these shapes, like pathfinders, those all work too. So you can use compound paths. I mean, if it can do type, it can handle a compound path. So I mean, that's a new feature, and I think a pretty important one for people that have been waiting for that. By default now, it can even activate missing fonts. So if you have missing fonts, it will activate those out of fonts.adobe.com. Let me get my artboards up. So this is a pretty big update actually for Illustrator. If you work with variable width, it now runs faster, but when you used to expand this out, where you would expand the stroke under object, it could be a lot of anchor points. So if I do go to path and outline the stroke, what you'll find now is that it simplifies the path by default. So there you're going to have a lot less paths to work with. If I type A and get my direct selection tool and select this and zoom in a little bit here with Alt or Option and a scroll button, you could see you don't get a hornet's nest. You get something that you can actually work with. So you could get your variable width set up and distort an object and then come in and start to take it from that point as a shape. Remember, these shapes now could be used in a different way with 3D. Oh, this one I think you might like if you work with posters or your select same font. So if I select this and I duplicated this, see Laura Ipsum, this is Impact, that's a duplicate. This is Sneakers. Let me move the zoom panels here for my viewing pleasure. And I put an impact over here on a different layer, on a different artboard. So this is what you need to remember about this. So if I say this is Laura Ipsum, and I go up to select same now, you'll see that there's a whole option in there for type. So you can get the font family with the style, the size, font size, fill color. So that way you can select everything and make one big update. So I could come in here and just say at this point, the style and the size, and that would select those two, and I could edit those no matter how many I have. But remember, this is going to go through the whole document. So you're probably going to want to use some strategies with layers to get the kind of control you might need if you're using a lot of artboards. You just need to remember that it's going to go across the document. Watch. Same, font, style, family. See, it picks this one up. And this is on a different layer. And it's on a different artboard. So that's all you need to be aware of. This is kind of like, you could be an illustrator in the past, used to it, and use a Command or Control A and think that basically you were on one artboard. But then when you zoomed out after you hit delete and saved your document, you could find that you possibly deleted everything in your whole document because they changed things. So this is the same kind of concept. You want to be aware that it's global. In designs like that with layers, people delete layers. Let's see, Joy. The font address. Oh, for Adobe fonts, that would be fonts.adobe.com. In fact, let me pull that up for you, because there's another thing I did want to bring up. I've got a link to it up here, at least we hope so. Here it is, Adobe Fonts. By default, it will automatically activate these from Adobe Fonts, but this is a good site to know about. There's more here than meets the eye. Let me just get my drop down so I can put this in the chat pod. Fonts.adobe.com. So that's all fine and good, the fonts. But what I found is if you come up here, you could look for vectors. Excuse me, I'm moving zoom panels. See where it says images, free. Check the digital management rights, but they tend to be free. So in here, you could search for, say, a fish or anything you want. Now, what's great about this, you can get vectors, illustrations, all free. It remembers free. That's wonderful, isn't it? And also you can get video. So you might want to take a look at this. You know, fonts.adobe.com basically gets you everything. You have to sign in with your account. But it's nice to be able to get all these vectors, be able to search for them, and just take a look over on the left-hand side and redefine things. You might want things that exclude people, include people. Up here, see, it's just free. So fonts.adobe.com. That way you can get things to extrude out with your new 3D features. Hey, you got to have fun. So this is basically a new select. Once again, where you've got, you can select under similar now, or same, and select things by font families or styles, or really nice, especially if you're working with posters, maybe even one artboard that's big. By the way, speaking of big, don't want to forget this. If I make a new document now, I want you to, you might not even be aware of this. See where it says points? How would you like yards, feet, and inches? So now you can make artboards that have yards or feet. Unbelievable, huh? Look at that. You could design billboards, things that go on the side of buildings, exactly to scale. Isn't that amazing? Look at that. You can now make a new document or resize an artboard up to basically yards or feet, inches. Now, Epson inkjet printers, for those that use Illustrator for art, can really interpret things up. But now you can really get things matched right to the size for oversized printers. Wow, pretty amazing. Architectural design printout, you know, realtors, things like that, that might want to get things bigger. Advertisements, pretty amazing. So speaking of big, your new document or artboards can now be pretty big size. This is a linked cloud document. What I did is I placed a file and I grabbed a Photoshop file that I had. So that's new too. You could go to File and just go to Place. And here I went, because it's set on my computer, see, I could do that. And I just said open cloud documents. So then any documents that I have there, mainly Photoshop, I could select them here and basically linked and place. You can always embed it or embed it after the fact. So it's only going to take it in as 8-bit. It doesn't have the capabilities. And then you can see, you can go to the links panel up there, and you can update the object, or you can right click right on its name. And we should get, my computer will work. Well, right up in here, I could embed it in that way, or go to the linked file and work with it from that standpoint there. So Photoshop files for those kind of workflows. Glyphs, if you've seen those can snap. You can also align to glyphs, and now Japanese fonts do the same. Here's your system compatibility. If you have an issue with Illustrator, this will come up when you start it and let you know that something's going on. And these are nice, radial, and you've got grids and mirrors. So this object, when I select it, should behave. It'll have a widget. This is a little dot there where I can space those out. And you see the one on the side controls how many little guys I want. Pretty interesting, isn't it? Look at the designs. Can you imagine this working with patterns, what you could do with something like this? Look at that. You could take just stock symbols and create these beautiful patterns. All you need is an object or a symbol, and basically go to object, and it'll have a repeat option right there. I'll keep the mouse right there. And you can go radial, or you could go to, grid or a mirror. Here's a grid of martinis. So when I click on that with the selection tool, what you see, you get these little tabs at the bottom that can add rows, take them away, columns. And this controls the spacing. So that means you're going to work with the tabs to get things to work the way you want them to work. Once you get it going, you can create these beautiful little grids. One that's pretty tricky is the mirror. Once you put that on, you think you could select it. And this is on a Mac. This might not be on a PC, but you need this big line here, and then there's a widget where you can rotate the other fish. So you can, work that way, but you don't see it. I found if you double click, it goes into a form of isolation mode, and there it is. So you can see how you can pull that around and go to the bottom and rotate it and create your fish. Pretty nice. Double click in a gray area or in a artboard area, or use the widget at the top. Watch, just double click, don't panic. If you're on a Mac, PC, maybe, that widget should show. I kind of panicked after the update, but I just did a double click and it reappeared. So I figured, well, somebody didn't complete their code when they went on vacation. But here I could click this little exit button up here. You can always use escape, but sometimes it might not jump out depending on what's going on. But you can't get out. Look at your properties panel. You've got your repeats up there. Appearance panel. It's a mirror repeat object. And double click and get to the contents in a group, and I can dig in. I mean, you can do that. But how do you get rid of these? You know, 3D, it's easy. You got the appearance panel. Well, you need to go to the object menu and you need to go to repeat. And you should be able to release it. I have to double click to come back up, and that should release it. Or go to options. I must have done something to it. No. Yeah, all I can do is change there. Let's try our grid. I don't know what I did to it, but you have to go to the menu or create an action. That will take care of that for you. Options just pulls up a dialog. Like I said, you can, now it's working. So you can release these and it'll go back to one. I'll undo. What if you wanted those to be all independent? This is a fantastic command. It's just expand. It's under object. Now they're a group. So you could ungroup it or use a direct selection tool. There might be groups and groups. I'll ungroup several times. Or just use my direct selection tool. Or just double click with the selection tool. That'll bury into it. They just double click and you can see these pieces weren't grouped when they were made. But you can expand things. And then you can use this with the symbol sprayer. You can expand patterns. And now that you've got grids and mirrors, you can expand those. So it's a great way, thinking of those concepts, to create more than one thing and then come back with an expand command and basically get your hands on the individual parts. Kind of like a step repeat, if you like that concept. Only much more interesting for a lot of art. Also, this is a rabbit hole you go down. You might use, let's say like this, a repeat. You might expand it, move those little martinis around, colorize each one, and then take the whole thing and turn it into a symbol or turn it into a brush. And then you can spray a grid around or you can paint with it. Simple, basic things applied in different ways. Let's see, we got the repeats. Let's see if there's another one up here. We got that. Kind of going back here about one or two versions. Recolor Artwork. That's a big one, if you haven't looked at that. It's been changed, and you might get disturbed by it when you first see it. Excuse me. So if I select this object now, which is, see, it's not grouped. I think we need to group it. Peter, I see you're coming on, probably for InDesign. I'm just finishing up Illustrator here. So I'll group this, Command or Control G, just to make it a group. Here's my little Recolor Artwork icon. And now what it does, it comes up in a mini version. And it's not a lightweight at all. In fact, these exist because you can click the advanced options and get into the big one at any time. And even there, you can do this. But you see, you can get your artwork up and just start to click. Excuse me, I have to click there. Get back in there. Get that guy selected and zoom him up. And we'll recolor him. Come on, little guy, you can move. Oh, it's cranky. And I did group you, but you've got a little issue, don't you? With this zoom panel. Well, there's the gripper. There we go, finally. So you can just randomly see, move the colors around. So now it's shifting the colors around the object. Pretty interesting. Down at the bottom, a slider. It's controlling brightness. The next, see the little dots right there at the left? Those are the ones. This one, the next one in, deals with the saturation. And if you drag these colors, you see, if you can see that, I can't zoom in, but you can start to drag these and enclose more of the colors within the range. I mean, that's kind of interesting also. So it compresses them, but see, it gets more of the range going through. And then I could come back up and start to randomly see move around. And of course, we have a reset button. We zoom out. Let's say I have a tiki hut down here. This is a symbol. And I go to Recolor Artwork. And if this will cooperate, I need to be zoomed out. See this color theme picker? Select that and drag across part of the content of something else that you want to take the color from, or drag it around and encircle it. Is that amazing? You know, maybe I want this butterfly to colorize Tiki Hut. Now, this is really interesting. A little different than color groups. I'm taking it from actual footage. So if I select this whole concept here and come back and get my color theme picker tool and encircle that same concept again, or just parts of it, then I can come down and move it around, but the colors all relate. Or maybe we want this. Or maybe all of this. Wow, Madison Avenue, you know, ad agencies where they make the bucks, they put the color book together and they take a long time to do that sometimes. You can do that here with Recolor Artwork. You can use existing artwork and recolor. So thank you for logging on for our friend Illustrator. Hope this has been helpful.